Good evening, everyone. My name is Mariah Hone. I am the Reader Services Assistant Manager for Mid-Continent Public Library. I apologize about my camera. Something is wrong and my face is very yellow tonight. We are going to be presenting, well, I'm not, Angie Strathman is going to be presenting our fall 2023 Buzzworthy books. Angie is our Reader Services Librarian and excellent at what she does. I will let her tell you a little bit more about herself and about the program. And if you, as Angie said, but we have a couple of new people in, if you have book recommendations, please feel free to put them into the chat for everybody to see. We love book recommendations. So thank you. I'll turn it over to Angie.
All right. Thank you and welcome. I'm glad to have you join us. This is a program that we do virtually on a quarterly basis. And so I end up presenting some of the newest books in the library. I do try to focus on the books that don't have a ton of holds, so that way almost all of the books that I'm talking about tonight are ones that you are going to be able to get on your bookshelves right away. And you don't need to frantically scribble down names and titles, because Mariah will be sharing a book list of all the titles that I'm discussing in the chat and email with you. If you would like to see previous versions of the Buzzworthy Books program, you can find them on our MCPL YouTube channel. And you can also sign up for our next one in January, where we will be specifically emphasizing some of our favorite books of 2023. But without further ado, I have a lot of fun titles to share with you tonight, so let's go ahead and get started. But we will be moderating the chat, so if you have any questions about any of the titles as I go along, please feel free to share them there, and we will address them as they come up or the end of the program. So the first title that I want to talk about tonight is What You Are Looking For Is in the Library by Michiko Ayama. This was one of my favorite recent reads because it is, of course, a book all about the joy of books and reading. It's a bit more heartwarming and tidy than I usually go for, but somehow it still worked for me. In this Japanese novel, we follow 5 different people. All of them are feeling a little aimless, a little lost, a little lacking purpose in their life in various ways, when they end up visiting a community library in Japan. There, the librarian offers them a list of suggestions, most of them on the topic they inquire about, which range from starting a business to a list of manga. But she also includes one completely random choice. The bonus books, which includes a book of poetry, an illustrated book on evolution, all end up, of course, being the right book at the right moment for each of these people. So in some library patrons, it may unlock a memory or a connection, or lead them to take one tiny step towards realizing a dream. Sometimes in very unexpected ways. I appreciated that they didn't lead to some really grand epiphanies, but just it gives them a slightly different lens and a different way of looking at the world that allows them to make the steps for themselves. I also appreciated that in this novel, each of these 5 people unknowingly serve as catalysts for others to take one small step towards their dreams as well. This book is an ode to books and reading, the magic of finding the right book at the right time that really speaks to us and what we are feeling and experiencing. Or when we're reading a book, suddenly we see references to it everywhere in the conversations we're having, in the memories it invokes, and in just the other things that we're reading and watching and listening to as well. This one was just a joy to read. It was charming and sweet and a lot of fun. Next, we have California Golden by Melanie Benjamin. This one is set in 1960s California, the age of Gidget and the Beach Boys, but life is not always sunshine and surf for the Donnelly women in this novel. The mother, Carol's lifestyle as a legendary female surfer often leaves her two daughters, Mindy and Ginger, to raise themselves. Her daughters initially follow in her surfing footsteps, but while Mindy achieves some success and eventually gets swept up not just into the world of surf, but also into the world of Hollywood and fame of her own, Ginger lacks her sister's talent and her sister's devotion to surfing. Instead, she ends up following a man into the countercultural world of drugs and cults. Melody Benjamin is a prolific writer of historical fiction, and most of her historical fiction novels center around female characters. She also brings in other elements of the time period, from the gendered expectations that are placed on all three women that they are all rebelling against in their own ways, through the war in Vietnam, which comes in through a USO tour of the country. While a lot of the novel focuses on the two sisters and their diverging paths, Benjamin also brings in elements of Mom Carol's backstory, which helps make her a much more sympathetic character as we get to know the story of what happened to her. So if you like Taylor Jenkins Reid's Malibu Rising, which also had a big surfing aspect to it, or Emma Cline's The Girls, which also takes place in the 1960s, you might want to give this one a try too, as well as anyone who is looking for a story that's both a family dynamics and also threaded through with cultural history of the time period. Speaking of sun, but also a slightly more sinister version of it, we have Sun Damage by Sabine Durant. This one, Allie and her partner Sean are con artists working their way through Europe, targeting wealthy socialites. Their latest target, Lulu, seems like a pretty easy mark. But when their latest scam takes an unexpected turn, it may be Allie's turn to be the target of her former partner. So she ends up taking a new identity as a private chef in the south of France. Will she be able to escape her past in more ways than one? This new setting has Allie in the midst of potential new marks, who also have their own secrets, while she's also hoping for a safe haven from the fallout of her and Sean's latest con. Sun Damage has a richly detailed South of France setting, so you get all the sights, the sounds, the smells, the food, as well as a very twisty plot. So this one is perfect for fans of Patricia Highsmith, particularly those of The Talented Mr. Ripley, Christine Mangan's, who often has similar psychological suspense and thrillers set in exotic settings, but also fans of Lucy Foley or Rachel Hawkins' The Villa. Next, we have Red Rabbit by Alex Grecian. Alex Grecian is a Kansas author, and in his latest novel, Red Rabbit, a motley crew of misfits is not off to see the wizard, they're off to hunt a witch. A witch named Sadie Grace, who has a $1,000 bounty on her head. The bounty attracts the attention of a really disparate group of characters, including a witch master, a widow, a couple of cowboys, and a mute girl named Rabbit, of the title. They all set off to claim the bounty, and along the way, they discover more than just witches. They also encounter other horrors like ghouls, demons, a cursed town, and plenty more terror. This one is a fun and interesting mashup of westerns and folk horror. And it also has a little bit of the elements of a quest novel that you typically find in fantasy. If you like the mashup of horror and western, you might also want to try Victor Laval's Lone Women, one of my favorite books of 2023. And then T. Kingfisher's Nettle and Bone also gathers a group of unlikely companions on a monster and mayhem-filled quest. That one really is more of a subversion of fairy tales, while this one is a subversion of tropes. If those titles maybe sound a little bit too dark for you, we have something a little bit later in Let's Get Quizzical by Kelly Ohlert. America loves a good love story, whether it is our current obsession with Taylor and Travis, for the dozens of reality TV dating shows that populate the airwaves, like The Bachelor. Kelly Ollard's romance, Let's Get Quizzical, imagines a new backdrop for this televised romance, that of a trivia game show. So Charlotte snags an appearance on her favorite trivia show, Brain Battle, because she hopes the prize money will help her pay for her ailing grandmother's care. What she doesn't expect to encounter is her former high school love, Eli, who broke up with her without explanation and broke her heart. And he is her new partner on the show. As Charlotte and Eli join forces to study for and to compete on the show, this one turns from a battle of the brains to a battle of the hearts, as they just might find the biggest prize of all, a second chance at love. My next title is One of the Boys by Jane Cowie. This one takes place in a near-future dystopia with a very chilling premise. In this near future, they have detected a gene that determines and predicts male violence. So parents have a difficult choice to make. Do you test your son and find out the answer? What if it maybe marks them for life? If your son tests M negative, then you get to breathe a sigh of relief. And your son is one of the good ones who gets to enjoy privileges that come with that designation. However, if your son tests positive, it means a life of being possibly ostracized and limited privileges and freedoms. But it also comes with a chance to possibly curb their violent tendencies before they can be acted upon. If you refuse to take the test, then you're left with that uncertainty. Two sisters make different choices when faced with this circumstance. B refuses to have her son tested and possibly marked. Antonia, however, does test her son, who tests negative, but she and her husband also run a clinic to explore treatment for the less fortunate M negative boys. The test is only one choice that these mothers must make in order to protect their children. This is a very twisty, speculative thriller that asks very thought-provoking questions like nature versus nurture, the nature of self-fulfilling prophecies, the ethics of prejudging people before they've taken any action, and also about the lengths that one might go to protect one's child. Another more lighter choice, we have A Most Agreeable Murder by Julia Seals. And it is a truth universally acknowledged that when a single man in possession of a good fortune drops dead at a ball, everyone is a suspect. A Most Agreeable Murder is a satire of both Regency romance and of historical mysteries. Our main character, Beatrice, is not dismayed when a potential wealthy suitor drops dead at the ball, because she's not interested in making matches. She's interested in solving mysteries. She has an obsession with true crime long before there were any podcasts about it. This, of course, is not very popular with her mother, who is very meddling, busybody woman, who is definitely a caricature of Mrs. Bennet from Pride and Prejudice. So Beatrice teams up with the amateur sleuth, Vivek Drake, with the very suave name, to solve this locked room mystery that takes place at the ball. A Most Agreeable Murder takes the common tropes of both historical mysteries and a Regency romance and adds a funny and a farcical edge to them both. This one has plenty of nods to both Agatha Christie and Jane Austen. One example is the aptly named Martin Grubb, who is a very obvious Mr. Collins stand-in as well. It has a very tongue-in-cheek playfulness as it explores the different tropes of both genres. And it adds some really fun twists to some very old stories. Speaking of fun twists to very old stories, Mythical retellings have been extremely popular ever since Madeline Miller's Song of Achilles first brought them to our renewed attention, with other authors like Jennifer Saint and Claire North bringing other worthy entries. Herc is newcomer Phoenicia Rogerson's attempts to retell the story of Hercules. But this is not your Disney version of the classic mythical man. If you're at all familiar with Greek mythology, that you'll know that bad things tend to happen to those in the orbit of the gods and the legends. In Rogerson's modern take on the mythical hero, she gives voice to everyone but Hercules himself. So we get to hear from his family, his friends, his lovers, his rivals, and his victims, all of which adds up to the story of a guy who's maybe not quite so heroic as his legacy portrays. Herc is a very modern retelling of this classic story, so if you're looking for a really faithful version, this one might not be it. It has playful storytelling, modern language and vocabulary and dialogue, and it doesn't shy away from the queer aspects of Hercules' story. Those who can't get enough of mythological retellings, especially those who prefer more modern takes, will want to pick this one up. Next, we have another mystery, The Housekeepers by Alex Bay. And this one is a fun twist on the heist novel. So when you think about it, who is better situated to pull off the ultimate heist in an English manor house? No one may be better situated than the group of servants who know all of the house's treasures, the hiding places, and the secrets of its owners. And what better distraction than a fancy ball in order to pull it off? Recently fired housekeeper Mrs. King uses all of the tools in her arsenal. Her knowledge of the house's layout, its possessions, her connections in the community, and most of all, her cunning in order to pull off the most elaborate heist you can find during the ball. She recruits a group of other women, including her seamstress sister, other servants, a black market trader, an actress, and my favorite characters, a group of women named Jane, who are former circus acrobats who have developed an uncanny set of skills to add to the cause in pulling off this heist. These women have motives, however, that go beyond the bounty and wealth that may result from this heist and may be more closely related to the secrets of the house's owners, and uncovering and exposing those as well. Next, we have another nonfiction pick, The Six by Lauren Grush. In 1978, a whistleblower exposed NASA's lack of diversity in its astronaut program. The result was the most diverse class in its history, 1978, which also featured the first 6 female astronauts. Journalist Grush tells the story of these 6 women, including Sally Ride, who was the first woman in space, and Judy Resnick, one of the astronauts who perished in the Challenger explosion. Grush's narrative gives both the background and the accomplishments of each of these 6 women, but she also doesn't shy away from the struggles and the challenges and the sexism that they endured in the mostly male institution of NASA. In addition to telling the story of these 6 women, this nonfiction book also explores NASA history and culture, including a previous plan to introduce women into the ranks that was scrapped because they thought it might distract from the moon landing. This, of course, is an obvious pairing with Margot Shetterly's Hidden Figures about the women mathematicians at NASA. And there's also another new book about NASA's 1978 class called New Guys by Meredith Bagby, which tells the story not just of these 6 women, but also of the first Black astronauts, the first Asian American astronaut, and the first gay astronaut, who also were a part of the 1978 class. Speaking of astronauts, our next title, The Defector, is from an astronaut turned author, Chris Hadfield. Former astronaut Chris Hadfield brings his NASA experience and his experience as a former test pilot to use in this high-stakes story of espionage and action set in the height of the Cold War in the 1970s. Our main character is a flight controller for NASA named Kaz Zemeckis, and he gets drawn into the world of intrigue and politics and spies when there is a plane crash in Israel of one of the new Soviet MiG-25s, and the United States is eager to get their hands on this new technology. The Soviet pilot in the crash, claims that he wants to defect, but in the midst of all of this Cold War tension, the United States is suspicious. Like, is he really a defector, or is he perhaps a double agent? Zemeckis is one of the people on the case. This is a thriller filled with delicious and heightened tension, lots of political intrigue, and plenty of high stakes and high action air battles that will thrill any lover of Top Gun or its sequel, Maverick. This one is a follow-up to Hadfield's debut, The Apollo Murders, but it can be read as a standalone as well. Next, we have a title that is perfect for those of you who might love The Crown. It is The Royal Windsor Secret by Christine Wells. The royals have had their scandals and their secrets long before Prince Harry or Meghan Markle, or even before Harry's parents, Charles and Diana. Historical fiction author Christine Wells takes the rumor that Edward VIII had a secret love child with a Parisian courtesan, and she uses that as the basis of this fictionalized story. Orphan Clea Davenport was raised in Cairo in the glamorous confines of the Shepherd's Hotel, but even she could not escape the rumors about her possible parentage, with rumors abounding that the Prince of Wales was her father. When she's 17, she is sent to London for her debut under the care of her aunt. But she's not so interested in making her debut into society because she has her sights set on becoming a jewelry designer, and she also has her own love that she wants to pursue. Meanwhile, she is also searching for the answers to her identity and to the secrets of her parents. Again, if you love The Crown, if you love to follow all the different royal gossip and scandal, you'll want to read this possibly true, possibly made up version of a long ago royal scandal. We have another nonfiction choice up next. It is Hitchcock's Blondes by Lawrence Leamer. So Alfred Hitchcock's films were famous not just for their suspenseful tone and their surprising twists, but also for launching the careers of some of Hollywood's most glamorous leading ladies and stars. So everyone from Janet Leigh to Grace Kelly to Eva Marie Saint and even Ingrid Bergman. Leamer previously has told other stories about the women revolving around famous men, including books about the Kennedy women and books about the women in Truman Capote's orbit. Here, he turns his attention to the famous director and the famous blondes who took star turns in his films in this group biography. In addition to learning more about each of these actresses' lives, there's plenty of drama, and they're just as colorful off-screen and off-camera as they are on. Leamer also discusses Hitchcock's own often troubling relationships with each of his leading ladies, including his obsessions and the links to sometimes unorthodox and unethical links he went through in order to get his star performances from each of these women. If you like more literary novels, books about family, and exploring the relationships between people and characters and their dynamics, you might like The Museum of Failures by Frida Umrigar. And in this book, Remy Wadia, after his father's death, travels from his life and his wife in Ohio back to his hometown of Bombay, India. Awaiting him there is the mother-to-be of his adopted child, who is having second thoughts about giving away her child. Bombay is also home to his ailing mother, with whom he has a pretty fraught relationship. Despite their differences, Remy ends up caring for her in her illness, forging an uneasy truce, until a photograph reveals secrets that she has been keeping from him all along. The photograph and the secrets that it brings to light shake Remy's belief about himself, about his family, about his place in it, and also about his capacity for forgiveness. Remy's feelings for his parents, especially for his mother, are complicated by these new revelations, as well as his own impending fatherhood, in this empathetic look at family, at love, at forgiveness. Those who enjoy other strong family stories, like the novels of Alice McDermott, Anne Patchett, Jhumpa Lahiri, or Rohinton Mystery, may want to give this one a try. So a while back, you could not escape the TikTok meme, "How often do you think of the Roman Empire?" For classicist Mary Beard, formerly of Cambridge, the answer is a lot. And the results of her scholarship make for an entertaining and enlightening experience for readers as they look into the actual life of emperors like Julius Caesar, Nero, and Caligula. Many accounts of these famous Roman emperors focus on the politics of it all. So we get to see their rise and fall, for example, and we get a chronological tour through their rules. Instead, Beer chooses to focus her nonfiction account thematically. So we get chapters on things like who knew that emperors had a lot of correspondence and spent an awful lot of their time writing letters. We also get invitations to the elaborate dinners, to the women in their orbits, and also to the various plans for secession, which makes for a fascinating description of both daily life and the major events of each of these rulers, and all of their major milestones. Mary Beard is a wonderful historian and classicist who writes books that are both accessible and entertaining, while again introducing you to lots of facts that you may not have discovered before. Moving on from Rome to romance, we have With Love from Cold World by Alicia Thompson. And this one takes place in Orlando, Florida. And Orlando is home to lots of different tourist attractions. But how is a third-rate winter-themed amusement park like Winter Wonderland supposed to compete with the likes of Disney World and Universal Studios? They're struggling a lot. And so the boss of this amusement park enlists bookkeeper Lauren and her annoying coworker Asa to come up with a proposal in order to increase revenue and visitors to this amusement park. At first, the two take this opportunity as rivals to compete against each other, but they soon realize that they must work together in order to keep their jobs and secure the amusement park's security. Cold World is a really fun winter-themed workplace romance that will appeal to readers who are looking for an opposites attract storyline. So in this one, our bookkeeper heroine is kind of nerdy and kind of reserved, while her colleague Asa is more laid back and carefree. This is also for anyone who's ever had the dream of being trapped overnight in an amusement park, because that is a key part of this particular story and a key development and the romance between these two unlikely people. I really enjoyed Alicia Thompson's previous romance, Love in the Time of Serial Killers, which took another really fun premise with very winning characters. And so I'm looking forward to checking out this one as well. Next, we have some historical fiction with Queen of Exiles by Vanessa Riley. Vanessa Riley is a former historical romance writer who has made a successful transition into historical fiction, particularly rich historical fiction featuring overlooked Black women. Her latest subject in Queen of Exiles is Queen Marie-Louise Christophe from Haiti, who briefly ruled as queen of that country before her husband King Henry is overthrown and killed. Exiled from her homeland, the queen and her daughters escape to Europe, where she relies on her own abilities to reclaim a life of status and influence in Italy. Riley's Queen of Exiles is very thoroughly researched and includes lots of details like newspaper clippings to lend further authenticity to her story and her portrayal of this overlooked and misunderstood ruler of Haiti. Next, we have The Rachel Incident by Caroline O'Donoghue. The Rachel of the title in this particular novel has just finished up university and she's working in a bookstore where she encounters three different men who will significantly affect the trajectory of her 20s. The first man she meets is James, her closeted best friend and roommate, who also works in the bookstore. The second man she meets is Fred Byrne, her professor, on whom she has a huge crush. The third man we meet a bit later, Carrie, who she begins an on-again, off-again relationship with. Rachel's plan to seduce her professor Fred go awry when Fred ends up being more charmed by James instead. This ends up putting Rachel in the middle of a very complicated dynamic that also includes the professor's wife, who she ends up working for. Meanwhile, she's fumbling with finding direction in her own life and navigating her own complicated fledgling relationship with Carrie. This is a book that really captures that awkward and earnest period in your 20s when you're still coming into who you are, when pivotal relationships loom really large in one's life, and there's that urgent need to figure everything out, and not yet realizing that this is more of a lifelong endeavor than a destination. This one has gotten a lot of comparisons to Sally Rooney, another Irish author, but actually I think I enjoyed this one even better. Next, we have a graphic novel, The Talk by Darren Bell. In this powerful graphic memoir, Darren Bell, who is the son of a white mother and a Black father, recounts the talk given to him by his mother at age 6. And this is the heartbreaking reality that many parents of Black children, particularly Black boys, must introduce about the realities of racism and how others perceive them as danger and threat rather than as fully human. From there, the author goes on to explore both the microaggressions and the overt racism he faces that show why this talk is still necessary today, from being stopped by the police to being accused of plagiarism by a colleague. He also questions his father's avoidance of the topic of race, while he also explores some of the real-life figures and examples like Tamir Rice and George Floyd, the basis of some of his Pulitzer Award-winning editorial cartoons. But he also peppers his story with other things too, like lots of pop culture references from everything from Star Wars to Star Trek to the X-Men. All of this is leading up to Belle's own experience as a father and him facing whether or not and how to have the talk with his own son. The illustrations add so much to the experience of this graphic memoir, as a single facial expression does so much work to enhance Belle's story and his message. This one would make a really great companion read to another really wonderful graphic memoir, Good Talk by Mira Jacob, which is about a Indian woman married to a white Jewish man and the various conversations she's had about race over the course of her life. So all of you fantasy lovers, I have not left you out. Next, we have Dreambound by Dan Fry. 12-year-old Liza has a very vivid imagination and she loves to escape, especially into the stories of her favorite fantasy series, the fairy tale series. Liza's father, Byron, is an investigative journalist who much prefers hard facts and logic to flights of fancy. When Liza disappears, Byron believes there's some connection to the fantasy series and the dozens of other missing children, all of whom also sought to find the real source of their magic reading. So Byron travels to Los Angeles, which is the home of the enigmatic author of the series, and the last known destination of both Liza and many of the other missing children. And it is now his turn to have his beliefs dismissed as he hunts for the truth. This one is an epistolary novel told frequently in Byron's notes and journal entries, as well as letters to his wife, internet posts, as well as some excerpts from the fantasy series itself. It explores a father's desperate attempt to find his missing child. Next is the humor essay collection, Congratulations, The Best Is Over by R. Eric Thomas. R. Eric Thomas is an award-winning playwright, a screenwriter, the author of a YA novel, and the author of a previous essay collection, Here for It. Most importantly, he is extremely funny and a very good storyteller. In this collection, it mostly follows his reluctant move to his hometown of Baltimore, including an obligatory visit to his high school reunion, which he live tweets, more than a few references to The Wire, and also his new house he purchases with his husband and their attempts at things like gardening. Family is also a frequent topic, covering both his marriage to his husband, a minister, also the death of his father-in-law, which is one of the more poignant essays in this collection. On the funny side, we get an essay about his obsession with Oprah's favorite things, as well as one about a plague of frogs invading his backyard. This one is best devoured via audiobook, which the author reads himself, and is for fans of other humorous essays like Samantha Irby's. And the last major title I want to share with you tonight is science fiction, The Deep Sky by Yumi Kitase. In this debut science fiction novel, Asuka is one of 80 elite students selected to board the Phoenix. Their destination is a distant but livable planet with the expectation that they're going to give birth to a new generation of humanity along the way during the voyage. With Earth on the verge of environmental collapse, Asuka and the rest of the Evenstar Project are humanity's last hope for salvation. But Asuka doesn't necessarily feel that way. She views herself as an imposter. And that feeling is compounded when there's an explosion aboard the ship that kills several crewmates, and Asuka is the only surviving witness. When there's suspicions of terrorism, Asuka is determined to uncover the cause and thus eliminate herself as a suspect. This science fiction debut includes some thrilling aspects with the explosion and the mystery, but it also brings in more introspective elements as it brings in Asuka's backstory of her training, her decision to join the project, and life in a refugee camp. And then finally, we just passed spooky season, but I did want to share a few books that are all about haunted houses. Many of these have holds on them still, but they were too fun and too interesting not to share. So first we have The Reformatory by Tananarive Due. This one takes place in the Jim Crow South, and it is about a reformatory school that is haunted by the ghosts of the boys who were abused there. So if you take the story of the Nickel Boys by Quilson Whitehead and you add some haunted and spooky elements to it, you get The Reformatory. A Haunting on the Hill by Elizabeth Hand is what happens when you update the classic Shirley Jackson Haunting of Hill House. This is about a playwright who rents the infamous Hill House for a month to stage her play. And she invites some guests, including the actors, for her play. But there are some uninvited guests who show up as well, particularly the malevolent forces summoned by the house itself. And then finally, we have Starling House by Alex E. Harrow. In this one, Opal dreams of Starling House, which is the notorious haunted house in her small Kentucky hometown. The reclusive caretaker of the house thinks he's going to be the last occupant, but both Opal and the house may have other plans as Opal learns more of her connection to both the house and to the family. And then finally, I just want to give you just a slight teaser of some forthcoming titles to have on your radar. Out this week is 60 Songs That Explain the 90s by Rob Harvilla. If you loved the podcast from The Ringer of the same name, you will enjoy encountering Rob Harvilla's digressions that give you both the history and the context of iconic 90s songs, as well as his own self-deprecating personal memories and connections. And we also have a very interesting and unusual science fiction debut, Afterworld by Debbie Urbanski. This one is part post-apocalyptic story because it's about what happens when humanity decides the only way to save the Earth is to get rid of the humans. And so it is about the last surviving human who is supposed to witness this transition and the AI that is writing a novel about it and just can't help but interject its own opinions. And then finally, if you loved The Silent Patient, then you will want to get in line for author Alex Michaelides' next suspenseful thriller, The Fury, which takes place on a Greek island, and more than one murder might also happen there. So these are just a few of the new and forthcoming titles to have on your radar. I haven't seen any questions so far pop up in chat, but please let me know if you have questions about any of the titles I've shared or any other books you might like to know more about.
And you can find the Bibliocommons list for everything that Angie talked about tonight in the chat.
Well, thank you, Teresa. Which title are you most excited about in tonight's program? Or anyone else is welcome to share as well. Yeah, I really like that author's previous novel, Honor. So that one sounds great too.
I'm going to jump in and say The Reformatory sounds very spooky and right up my alley. So I can't wait to read that one.
Red Rabbit. Okay. Yes, horrors and westerns are usually two of my least favorite genres, but I did really love Lone Women, which is also a mashup of both of those. So. Yes, anytime a book is funny, I tend to enjoy the author's audiobook ones too. Right, Mariah, do you have any like closing wrap up
Um,
announcements you need to make?
I don't think so. You talked about doing these quarterly, correct? Do you have a date for the next one? I do not immediately have it up.
I believe it is in January. MCPL is once again releasing our staff's favorite books of 2023. That is, you can look forward to that coming out in various places, including our MCPL Readers Lounge Facebook page and the website. And so to kind of tie in with that project, I believe the next one is in January, but I don't have the specific date.
So we're very excited about that, about the best of. It was very popular last year, and we hope you guys will check that out again this year. And if there are no other questions or comments, we will see you guys again in January.
Okay, so we
Oh,
have
yep.
question in chat. Some of my favorite mystery selections or authors. Well, first off, the next Buzzworthy program is Thursday, January 4th, also at 7 o'clock. But yeah, so some of my favorite mystery writers, I do really love Louise Penny and the Chief Inspector Gamache series. I really liked the crime novels of S.A. Cosby. So there's Razorblade Tears. His latest one is All the Sinners Bleed. And then more of the kind of suspense thriller aspects. Samantha Downing writes deliciously unlikable characters who you definitely wouldn't want to meet in real life, but they are fascinating on the page. So those are just a few of my personal favorites. And I could go ahead and type them in the chat. So, Jane Harper writes really great mysteries set in Australia too. I like those a lot. More traditional mysteries. And Alex Horowitz has some really fun ones too that have take place in Britain, and some of them have raiders as sleuths or partners of detectives, and I just kind of like those meta aspects of that series as well. There's Twist of a Knife, The Word is Murder, and a couple of other types. Anthony Horowitz. I knew I had that wrong.
All right. If there are no other questions, then we will wish everybody a great night and happy reading.
Hey, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.